I just, I just, I just speak my peace, keep my peace.
What's good, y'all? Welcome to the Speak My Peace podcast. As always, I'm your gracious host, Greg Lacey. Like we always do about this time, I hope this episode reaches you all in good health, good wealth, and that you're taking care of yourself and your loved ones. As we close out this greatness series, or what I deem to be the greatness series, because the last couple of episodes, majority of episodes this season have been primarily focused on the requirements of us becoming our greatest selves, covering different things and talking about certain topics and just the requirements for us being the greatest version of ourselves as we move forward and on this journey called life. Now, I'll be remiss when I speak about all these greatest things and I don't speak about the man that coined the phrase, I am the greatest. I said that before I even knew I was. If you don't know by now, I'm talking about the Louisville Lip, aka Muhammad Ali. I want to speak about Muhammad Ali, and I'm not going to delve into that specific quote because he's a man of many quotes. We talk about affirmations. That's one hell of an affirmation. I am the greatest, and I said that before I ever knew I was. We're speaking about, being crazy enough to dream, being crazy enough to have goals and to reach those goals. That's crazy. It's not crazy, but it's crazy to people on the outside looking in. To say that you are the greatest and you said that before you ever knew you was. That's you walking in your purpose. That's you knowing your purpose. That's you knowing your worth. Muhammad Ali was a man that check off all those things. The reason why I speak about Muhammad Ali is because there's an indictment and a genocide on black folks who are educated. We can go back into some of the earliest days of our people being stolen from our native land, our motherland, and being held captive here in this country of America. You can fast forward a couple of years. You can go to Nat Turner's rebellion. Nat Turner was a very educated man. So educated that, during his rebellion, that wasn't his first time escaping. His first time escaping, I believe he escaped at the young age of 21. The only reason he returned was because he had got so hungry that he became delirious, and so he returned to where he and his family was held captive. But just think about how educated and how advanced this man was that he escaped and only returned because he couldn't find enough food to keep him alive. So it was basically like, I'm just playing with y'all. Like, I just want to let y'all know that I can escape, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to succumb to this life that I don't want to succumb to. Obviously, he ended up escaping again, and that led to the rebellion. Think about Frederick Douglass, one of the most educated men of our time, back then and today. He was a threat to America because he was educated, and it was the educated people around him. Think about Dred Scott, another educated person. Think about Sojourner Truth, another educated woman. Think about Harriet Tubman, very educated. All these people posed as threats to America because they could break that norm. They could influence people around them. They could shift what was going on in America because they were letting people know they're valuable, also encouraging people to find the answer to themselves, for themselves. They were threats. You can go further beyond that. People of their lineage. We speak about the Malcolm X and the Dr. Martin Luther Kings, which I will get into later on. They were threats because they were educated. One was formally educated and one was self-educated, both very educated and knew their worth. Think about beyond that, the Black Panthers, very educated men and women and children. And they posed as a threat to America because they were educated and they knew their worth and they made sure to assess their worth consistently. 56 years ago, Muhammad Ali refused to enter in the armed forces draft. He refused to go fight the Vietnam War, citing his religious beliefs. Around this time, Muhammad Ali was recently converted to Islam. He had the name change, which to America was the first offense of him because not only was he hanging around and linked to this religious group who were saw as threats because, again, you have a group of black people who knew their worth and were very well educated. They were posed as threats to America. So now he's linking, you have the greatest athlete of his time linking with this group. He's now a threat. Now he's changing his name, saying that he no longer wants to bear the name of the slaveholder who had captured his family, and he has a name change to this name that has a meaning behind it, a name of the Muslim faith. He's a threat. Aside from that, going back into him refusing to enter in the draft, aside from his religious beliefs, he also does have moral beliefs. He didn't want to go to a foreign land and fight people of darker skin and darker complexion, may not look like him, but have a dark complexion like him. He didn't want to inflict harm or violence amongst his people to aid and abet a country that were inflicting violence against him and his people. That rubbed America the wrong way. Muhammad Ali was 25 years old when this was going on. Muhammad Ali was on the top of the world. And the reason why I bring up his age is because we think about some of our great entertainers that have perished at a young age and the impact they had on the world. Notorious B.I.G., one of the greatest rappers ever, still to this day, passed away at age 24. Think about the impact he had on the world for him to be one of the greatest rappers of his time and still be one of the greatest rappers to this day at the age 24. Still had a hell of a life to live beyond that. But think about the impact he made in his short time on this earth. Think about the listeners, for you listening to this episode. Think about where you were at 24. And think about what you enjoyed doing at that age and being the best in the world. Think about the magnifying glasses that is on you, but also think about the pressure of that life, of accomplishing so much in so little time. It's a lot. Tupac Shakur, aside from being one of the greatest rappers, he was without a doubt top influential people in this world of all time. I don't think that many can debate that. I don't think many would debate that. He died at 25. He had made so much impact on this world in his short time on this earth, and his life was taken away at that young age. Now think about Muhammad Ali being their age and making this controversial decision to not aid and abet this country who is still lynching his people, sicking canine dogs on his people, holding his people down in the streets, beating them with batons, refusing their service, refusing them to be able to sleep at certain hotels, refusing them to be able to swim in certain swim pools in the summer, refusing them to be able to eat at certain restaurants, refusing them basic human rights. Think about the controversial decision for him to not, and it's not even controversial, it's controversial to other people, because I think to sane people it's not controversial. It's like, yeah, I understand why he wouldn't support that, because why would he aid and abet a country that's trying to go to a foreign land and inflict these things to these people when they're already doing it to his people back home? Why would he influence that? Why would he encourage that? And even the people that weren't refusing to enter in the draft, they were going overseas and fighting in these wars, and some of them were getting hurt, some of them weren't getting hurt, but they were coming back home, and in comparison to their counterparts, their pale counterparts, they were living different lives. You know, their pale counterparts coming back home and being heralded as heroes, having parades thrown for them in their respective towns, to where the black people were coming back to this country subjected to the same realities they were leaving. So they were still being called N-words with the hard R's, still being beaten by the people who were quote unquote sworn in to serve or protect. They were still having dogs sicked on them. They were still refused service in hotels and in motels and restaurants and certain things like that. They were still subjected to that same reality that they had faced before they left. And you have Muhammad Ali, at this time, age 25, one of the best boxers in the world, one of the top athletes in the world. He's refusing to support that. And America hates it. America wants this man's neck. Think about how powerful, think about we talk about knowing your worth and accepting your worth. Think about how in tune Muhammad Ali was with himself during this time to refuse that, knowing that there were going to be consequences that coming from it, knowing that there was already, scrutiny with him in the world, him correcting people on his name, him telling people don't call me that name because that's linked to the slave owners that, owned my people. And people were fighting him against that, fighting against him for that. Think about that sanity of back then, this man is saying, that's not my name anymore. Please don't call me that. People saying, no, I'm going to call you this. This is your name. Even though he legally changed his name, even if he didn't legally change his name, but even though he legally changed his name, there were people fighting him against his legal name. Think about the insanity of that. Think about the insanity of media portraying him as this crazy man for a simple thing as requesting being called a certain name. Muhammad Ali was a man of great, when we speak about discipline, he is a man of a great discipline. He encountered a lot, but the greatest thing about Muhammad Ali, when I speak about, people being educated, he was very educated. He spoke often about what he believed in. He spoke often about what he believed against, and he wasn't afraid to correct people. And Muhammad Ali's legacy is largely reflected on of him as a boxer. But I think his legacy beyond him being a boxer is even greater. I think the legacy that he leaves behind as a man is great. I think it's way far beyond what he was as a boxer, because he influenced a lot of people that came behind him and followed that same path. We have athletes like Muhammad Abdul Rauf, who in the 90s was refusing to pledge allegiance to the flag on a large stage such as the NBA because he didn't want to align with what was going on in the country that was saying that this is the land of the free. And so he refused to pledge allegiance to the flag because he didn't believe in this country's values. Obviously, he was blackballed. That sparked, the change we have in Colin Kaepernick. I've been very vocal in this podcast in my support for Colin Kaepernick and what he stood for. He was then blackballed because he chose a platform such as the NFL to bring to light the injustices that were going on with our people around the world and how it was affecting our people, and also just bring in light to police brutality all around the world. Muhammad Ali encourages or influenced athletes like LeBron James, who, after the murder of Trayvon Martin, him and his teammates decided to bring light to that issue on a large stage such as the NBA. And LeBron James did many other things as far as activism go, but that was like one of the turning points in his career as far as how people looked at him as athletes. From LeBron James, we can go to his former teammate, Kyrie Irving. During the 2020 NBA bubble, where the NBA was paused because of the coronavirus, there was a lot of uprising going on around the world due to the injustices of black people. And when the NBA said, okay, it's time to return back to playing games, he said, no, I don't want to go back. There are too many things going on in this world for me to want to go back and play basketball, because my people are being killed in the streets. My people are being strangulated. My people are being chased down and hunted down on runs in their cities by people who aren't even police. There's too many things going on for me when I return to basketball. The bigger issue at hand is these injustices and this inequality and this oppression within this country. And people hated that, just like they hated Muhammad Ali. This is the lineage of Muhammad Ali and other athletes during that time with Muhammad Ali that were fighting for our rights and things like that as well. But Kyrie Irving is the lineage of that. And the reason why I bring up Kyrie Irving and want to speak about Kyrie Irving is because obviously we've all seen the stir he caused this past fall with the social media post. For those of you who've been living under a rock, Kyrie Irving, one night, I guess he saw a documentary, or he didn't see a documentary. That was my only issue with it. But there was a documentary on Amazon that he posted to his social media. He didn't write a caption about it. He didn't tell people to go look at it, to go view it, to go buy it, or anything. He literally just posted it. And I guess that this piece of literature, which was a documentary, contained certain tropes or certain ideologies that aligned with anti-Semitic values. And this just caused a frenzy in the world. Now Kyrie Irving is, he hates certain groups. Kyrie Irving is anti-Semitic. And it's just, the list goes on to what people portrayed this young black man to be. And like many black people, it pissed me off. Just because the main thing that pissed me off is because he never said anything. And because he never said anything, and then when they started to paint pictures of him of being a certain person or of a certain value or have a certain character, when he didn't deny it because he didn't feel the need to deny it because it wasn't the truth in the first place, that narrative then became the truth of him being anti-Semitic. And it really just, and I hate to use this phrase because it makes me sound old, it really just grinds my gears. Because you have this another educated young black man who has a world at his fingertips, who has a huge platform such as the NBA, but he also has his own platform because of stardom, because of the accomplishments he's attained in the NBA, becoming one of the best in his position, becoming a world champion, and so many other things. He's one of the most popular athletes, and so he has a lot of eyes on him. He influences the youth. And so when he doesn't deny these things, that narrative that the media creates then becomes a truth. The thing is, though, the media has been waiting for that time to paint him as something and out him as something. You can go back to the bubble. You can go back to him protesting with the Native Americans at Standing Rock. You can go back to him refusing to get the VAC word when the mandate came down for NBA players to have to get it. People were waiting and picking and waiting for the perfect chance to try to throw this man off his game, and he gave them a chance. And this whole ordeal, the only thing I didn't like about Kyrie Irving is that I've been a fan of Kyrie Irving since high school. Kyrie Irving, I think, is like a year older than me. So I've essentially seen him growing up because I've been a fan of him since his senior year. One of the main reasons why I'm a fan of him outside of sports is because of who I believe him to be outside of sports. He, to me, perceives to be a very educated man. When he speaks about a topic that's near and dear to his heart, he speaks about it eloquently. And so because of that, that's an athlete that I can attract to. That's an athlete that I can believe in. That's an athlete that has values. And so I've always admired that of Kyrie Irving outside of who he is as a basketball player, because he's a great basketball player, but he also seems to be or perceives to be a great man outside of that as well, because of his values that I can see, because of things that he's aligned with and things he decided to bring to light and the things that he decided to fight against. During this entire thing, you know, he was painted as this devil. He was painted as this person that was anti-Semitic, and he chose not to fight against that. And I don't condemn him for that. But there was a chance to where, or there was a time to where he was asked to speak about certain things in regards to the piece of literature he shared. And to me, it came off to me that he just didn't seem educated. I think, and I may be wrong in this, but I think it came out that the documentary that he shared, he had never actually seen it. So he couldn't speak about whether or not there were anti-Semitic tropes. And that's the only thing that pissed me off. Not that pissed me off about him, but pissed me off about the whole ordeal. Because no one actually seen it. I think still to this day, people just ran with the story of this documentary containing those things. Because there was one person, there was one editor, I forget who he works for, but he saw Kyrie Irving share it, and he ran the story that Kyrie Irving is anti-Semitic because he shared the documentary that had anti-Semitic tropes. However, all the stories I've seen regarding this documentary this documentary featuring these anti-Semitic tropes never once spoke about what those things were. So I was always curious about it. I wasn't about to go see the documentary because I just wasn't interested in it in the first place. But I was always curious about what those tropes were, but no one ever spoke about it. So in the back of my head, it's like, I don't know that to be the truth. I just know that someone painted this narrative about this young black man, and the rest of the country had been waiting to out him as someone that they could use as target practice, and this was that opening. And so that's really the main thing that picks me off about the whole ordeal. And obviously with that came a lot of backlash. It came with a lot of scrutiny. Kyrie Irving has faced a lot of backlash and a lot of scrutiny in his life as of late anyways, because of the things that he's been aligning with and the things that he's been fighting for. And he's not wrong in the things he's fighting for, the things he's fighting against, and the things that he's aligning with. But because we live in a racist country, because we live in a racist world, you have this educated black man that's speaking about these things that are wrong, and America wants to put him back in his place. So now you have this chance to put him back in this place. He was suspended for 5+ games, again, for never even saying anything, but because they wanted to use him as target practice, the league and the media and the world essentially wanted him to condemn, or they wanted him to confirm that he was not anti-Semitic. But he refused to do that because he never once came out and said he was anti-Semitic in the first place. And so because he refused to condemn that, they decided to punish him. That's the power of the media. You cannot say anything and someone could create a narrative about you. And once you don't do what they want to do, you don't conform what they want you to conform to, that narrative then becomes the truth. And that's what happened here. Kyrie Irving never once said anything, and because he never said anything, they created that narrative and didn't condemn that narrative because he knew that it wasn't truth. They then ran with it, and now he has to condemn that. So because he refused to condemn that, suspending him for playing basketball, they fined him. They asked him to make a donation, and then he had to have a conversation with the league commissioner. At this conversation with the league commissioner came out and said, "Oh, this person is not anti-Semitic." Like, we knew that. Us black people knew that because nothing about what he did seemed wrong to us. So the fact that you thought you had to have a one-on-one with this man and then come out and denounce that he wasn't what people were calling him, it just goes to show the power of the media, but also goes to show how powerful those racist tropes, because America want to focus on every single trope besides these actual racist tropes that has lived in this country for almost 500 years. But no one needed the commissioner to come out and condemn him or to come out and be a judgment of character, because we're not looking for that in the first place. But that just goes to show just how these things happen in this world. So he returns to playing basketball. And on December 18th, the Nets play against the Wizards. It's a road game. Kyrie Irving is at the free throw line, and the Wizards PA person decides to display a Happy Hanukkah message on a Jumbotron while he's at the free throw line. Now, I'm not condemning Hanukkah. I'm not condemning Jewish people. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I think that timing is poor. It's piss poor. Actually, it's not even just poor. It's piss poor. I think that you can display that message anytime during a game, but the fact that you wait until this man is on the free throw line because you want to troll him, it's in bad taste. Because you can't throw rocks and then hide your hands. And what I mean by that is, had Kyrie Irving caught wind of those antics that happened while he was in a game, obviously he's not looking at the Jumbotron or he's not looking at the message while he's at the free throw line. But I got word of that, and then he goes back and shares that piece of literature and doesn't say anything, or even a different piece of literature and doesn't say anything, the world would have been in an upheaval. He probably would have got suspended for the remainder of the season. However, this person decided to display this graphic to troll him, to get him to incite him, to get him to react to that. They wouldn't have been held accountable for their actions. So I asked this question, and the reason why I even bring up this entire topic is because this country is built on the protection of every single group. This country protects most racial groups. This country protects most religious groups. This country protects most gender groups, even gender lack thereof. People who don't identify with gender. All those people are protected. What I mean by protected is that you say something that is anti any of those groups, there is going to be some backlash because of the groups that are fighting for the equality of those groups. And so you are going to be pointed out as a person who's trying to oppress those people. you want to be pointed out as a person who's anti that group, and you're deemed a terrible person. So how is it that we have so many groups in this country that are protected but black people? Why is it that when things are done to black people, people get to throw their rocks and hide their hands? Why is this message being displayed to Kyrie Irving while he's at the free throw line? Why is it that when Muhammad Ali tells someone he doesn't want to be called his name or called a name that's linked to a slave owner that captured his people, that there's a fight against it? Why is it that when Colin Kaepernick comes out and says that I'm going to continue to kneel during a Pledge of Allegiance because I want to bring light to the issues at hand, such as police brutality against black people and the systematic oppression against black people, he's then not allowed back into the league? How come Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, one of the greatest shooters in the NBA ever, decides to not pledge allegiance to a flag? He's then not signed by another NBA team. But when those same actions are done or brought upon black people, we're asked to turn the other cheek. We're asked to stand down. We're asked to be nonviolent. But you substitute black people in any of those instances I say that I just mentioned. If Colin Kaepernick was fully white, if Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf was of a certain of a different religious background, let it be Christianity, just throw that out there. If Kyrie Irving is is not a black man, if Muhammad Ali is changing his name from something that's a Muslim faith to to align with a last name of slave owners, they're probably applauded and patted on the back. In fact, going against them for doing so is probably some type of unwritten law in this country. So why is it that we aren't protected in a sense that everyone else is? And this is not a cry for help, because as I constantly say on this podcast is about uplifting my people. This podcast is about encouraging my people to support each other. We have so many things going on in this world that's trying to hold us down and keep us down, and pigeonhole us, that we have to realize that we have to be there for each other because no one else will be there for us. There's an indictment against educated black people. Every time you can span back history 400 plus years, someone has been educated, they have known their worth, and they have been outspoken, that has led to their death. Obviously, I'm just going to go to the most prominent figures, but it's more than that. Angela Davis spent most of her young years in prison. I'm pretty sure they would have liked to have tried to take this woman's life. Thankfully, they didn't, and thankfully, she's still here and educating the youth and educating the world in this fight for equality. Dr. Martin Luther King, very educated. He held a bachelor's degree, held many doctorate degrees, and he was the leader in this fight for civil rights. He also believed that fighting against brutality with peace. He believed in killing them softly. He believed that that fight was going to lead to some sort of change, some sort of shift in the country. But he knew too much. He was encouraging and influencing people to, one, educate themselves, but also educate themselves about the laws and the ordinances that were going on. Also, he was influencing people to want that change, to speak about that change and protest that change, and do so peacefully and not fight back against force. And he was a threat because of that. He was a threat because of the influence he possessed against this world and against this country. They had to take him out because had he garnered any more power, it would have been some sort of shift. Malcolm X, very educated, not formally educated, but he believed in self-education. He believed in reading books. He believed in finding answers for certain things. He believed in being well-read about certain things. Another person that's very well-spoken. And he was fighting for human rights. Malcolm X wholeheartedly believed that because I look a certain way, because my skin complexion is a certain way, and my neighbor's skin complexion is a certain way, we shouldn't have a disparity in our rights. We should both be allowed to do the same thing in this world and this country. We should both have the opportunity to do whatever we want. And it wasn't because it was handed to us, because it was a God-given right. And America hated that. They also hated that he didn't believe in accepting force and not striking back. He wholeheartedly believed that if you hit me, there's going to be some type of retaliation. And America hated that. They hated that he was influencing a generation of folks to fight back. America hated that he was influencing a generation of folks to believe that these things that were being passed and these laws that were being passed and these ordinances that were being introduced shouldn't even be introduced in the first place, because there shouldn't have been disparity in the rights of one human being to another human being in the first place. And America hated that. So he has to be removed. So that should tell y'all, you see all these historic emphasis. I know I only gave y'all 2, but you see all these historical instances to where black folks have been educated and they were perceived as threats. Obviously, I'm not going out here and tell y'all to do certain things that take your life away, but that should incentivize y'all, not getting your life taken away, but the fact that every time a black person is educated, they possess or are looked at as threats in this country. That must mean there's something on the other side of that. There's something so powerful in knowing our worth. There's something so powerful in being educated and speaking out against certain things that America don't want us to attain that. And the fact that that's being kept from us and trying to be kept from us, that should be enough for you to think that, okay, that has to be attained, because if it was easy to get, then I probably wouldn't need it. But the fact that it's so hard to attain, and not only is it so hard to attain, people are fighting me against attaining that, there's a reason for that. So there's light on the other end of that tunnel. There's something on the other side of us being educated, but also knowing our worth. And we have to know that. We have to know that there's power in that education, and we have to seek that. I was watching All American earlier today, and I saw this very powerful quote that Coco Gauff was a feature. She was featured on the show this episode, and she said this quote that said, "The system is not designed to support us. It is designed to use us until we are no longer valuable, to make us accept less than what we deserve." The only way that we continue to accept less than what we deserve is we are not educated on what we deserve. And we deserve the world, just like our pale counterparts. Y'all have to remember that. You can't force me to be a lesser version of myself. You can't force me to accept crumbs. You can't force me to live a life of a lesser value than someone, than my neighbor, just because of the color of my skin tone. Because of the color of my skin tone, I know that I'm deserving of the world, and we have to remember that. As we get out of here, my what to watch for this week, I'm gonna go with Stand on Showtime. If you have Showtime, watch the documentary Stand. Once again, my what to watch for this week is Stand on Showtime. That's the Speak My Peace podcast for this week. I'm out.